going on, Matt?
Hey man, I was just tinkering with my background there to see if I can make myself look better. But
And I'm making sure I get my there we go, microphone up. My mouse quit working, so I'm having to use my keyboard here. So bear
yeah,
with me.
check your little. Is it battery or Bluetooth?
It's no, this one plugs into a block, so my battery one works fine, which I may have to plug in. I think I have it in my backpack.
Yeah,
But
my little plug-in, the USB thing every once in a while works loose and it'll stop.
LinkedIn. Let me just get one thing up here. There we go. All right. I saw your scouting report on LinkedIn today.
Yeah, you got Jory's got a copy of it to show live too, so you can
I
see
loved
it.
it. Now, when I went in this morning and looked at it, you could see it, but you may have did you kind of gray it out a little bit so people had to call on it on the LinkedIn one, or is it
No, I think it's just how it.
okay?
I
Cool.
think when it downloads, it should download clear. But this is.
I love it. I love it. Well, so everybody, welcome to lunch with Lumberman Matt. I saw you on the show yesterday making some great comments, and what we're just bringing up here. So welcome to lunch with Lumberman, Matt Layman, Layman's Lumber Guide. And I told Matt I signed on to LinkedIn this morning, was looking at it, and the first thing that popped up was the Layman Lumber Guide scouting report. Well done. That looked awesome. Right out. What's the feedback so far on that, Matt?
It's this is the first week we've had specified prices, but I've got a formula the way I do it. It's kind of a algorithm thing that calculates the specified prices. So all I have to do is just change the random length number, the random tally number, and I've got really good sources now. I've got three good scouts out in the field, and I got another company that's a large contractor yard that's in probably the eastern half of the United States. I'm working with them to try to give me some Southern Pine stuff. But the cool thing is this is all vettable, reliable guys that are and men and women that are actually giving me real time feedback. And a good example of that is last week when I was getting ready to go to market. I don't know if we've talked since then. I was getting ready to go to market with my report, and one of the scouts came back and said that he just talked to a mill who was offering Southern Pine at $100 under print, and they completely missed it, and they still haven't caught up to it. But my numbers are well below where quote print is. But it's. I told the guy last week. I said they even wrote. I said, if you doubt the numbers, go offer them, see what happens.
So yesterday on the show, we had some people commenting on 2x4 prices were. So I won't rehash yesterday's show, although we did get a little feedback about less political conversation.
From you or from me?
From no, from some of our viewers. Greg was talking about the.
I know. I got it too. I got
policy.
I got it last week too. About I was talking about just the inflation bill thing, and I got pounded by a guy who's a state senator. Told me quit talking about politics.
Did he see it? The state? Did he saw it on our show?
No, I wrote about it last week. I mean, Jericho wrote a little piece about how the inflation thing wasn't going to really do a whole lot, and he said I was talking too much about global warming, and I said all I was talking about was watch the coastal states because they're flooding, and that could have some impact on the lumber market. But I try to stay away. I had a rule when I first started. The two things I wouldn't touch was religion and politics. And the reason I wrote that, I said that to myself because I knew I wasn't going to be able to do it.
Yeah, so, well, it's so funny. Well, that's great. Well, look a lot of stuff came up yesterday. What we talked about yesterday on the lumber market, since I've been out doing some other things, working on some other integrations here, I was really out of the market. And that's one reason why I think, Matt, you and I talk about it. A lot of times buyers appreciate you a lot because There, Donnie Nixon's putting up 2x4 16s, number 2, 795 delivered into Houston. So I asked some people to start putting some numbers up during our show so we could see what stuff's trading at, Matt.
So, Donnie, what is that compared to what it was last week?
Yeah, Donnie, if you know what that was last week, could you give us a kind of what that was versus last week? It would help. What we appreciate is, so if I'm a buyer sitting at a location, and for instance, Donnie, I buy 2x4 16s, or somebody in Houston, they may buy 2x4 16s every day. They may buy them once a week. You go move down the chain to the wholesaler. The wholesaler distributor usually have the most information, right? Because they're talking about that item 100 times a day to 15 different sellers and buyers. So what the guide here really helps in any information here. Donnie put 2 days ago, it was 825 delivered. And that's probably the offer price. Now Donnie bid on it for buying 10 or 15 trucks. I bet he could probably even get under that. Does that make sense, Matt?
Yeah, and here's something I want to point out too, and Donnie probably knows this, but buying them. But when you buy straight trucks of 16s, you've got 20 or 8 feet of space in the middle of that truck that doesn't get loaded. So you've got 20% of the capacity of the load that doesn't get loaded. So you got to factor in also, be careful when you get your freight rates on a straight truck of 16s, because your freight rate is going to be based on 20% less volume, which means your freight rate is going to be 20% higher. So if they're quoting you per 1,000 board feet, that's fine. But if somebody's quoting you like 350 a mile, and you're really going to get like 18,000 feet on the truck rather than 22,000 feet on the truck, you're going to you get a little freight surprise if you're not careful. So just be aware of when you're buying those. Say hot dog got a straight truck of 16s, and you come in, well, it was only 2/3 loaded or 4/5 loaded.
Right on. Well, so yesterday, Matt, great point. We talked about what was going on in the market. Oh, so finish my first thought. So make sure the report's really good to report to Matt on, and also to get information on, because what Matt's report is really going to do is show you not only what the ask price is, but it's going to show you what, like he said, hey, one of my scouts said that they knew if they bid at this, they could buy X amount under that product, right? Because there's the quoted price and there's the real price.
Yeah, what I'm trying to show you is when you pick up, because no matter when we publish the numbers, whatever they are, they're old business. It's history. So what I'm trying to do is anticipate, and all I can do is really 1 or 2 days ahead of time. Is like, when you pick up the phone next time, what can you expect to pay for that product?
Donnie had another good point. He said 2x4 number 2 Southern Pine were not available last week. The mills here on the west side mysteriously had no 2x4s to offer.
Yeah, and yesterday in our inner circle, one guy was saying it was he said surprisingly all of his Southern Pine that he ordered for last week it was already on his yard. It showed up with quick trucks, but
yeah.
This market's in a really funky spot because everybody's saying the same thing. Greg said it yesterday. They're in sync or in alignment, but everybody's running inventory lower because they know they expect prices to go lower in August. But what's happened is that inventory is turning quicker than they thought, because the builders are working on getting starts, all their fourth quarter starts done, so they can get the completions done. So what we know is there's a surge of business right now, but we know that from what the builders are saying, they're going to spend the next 3 months completing projects, not starting projects. So we know that lumber is going to be more accessible and more available, but the mills know that too. So you hear about these fourth quarter curtailments that are going to happen. That's going to happen, but it's only going to happen once the mills run up all their rough dry. They fill up the parking lots with all the lumber that they've got. So there's going to be a period when you're going to hear mill curtailments are starting, but there's still going to be a buttload of mill wood that's available to sell. And there's going to be a price they're going to hit. They're going to say, well, we're not going to sell it to that price. We're just going to build inventory. And the buyers are going to say, well, we're not going to buy it at that price. And then we're going to hit a place where the market's underbought in the middle of the winter or the middle of the late fall, and the market's going to start going up because of supply issues. And
it's interesting. I was talking to Matt Beamer after the show yesterday, and he talks to some people down in Texas that deal with the big home builders, and I know some of these buyers at the home builders. they're not currently. His thought was the same thing. Sooner or later, they're going to see a price and think that they need to come in and buy. But right now, some of the big 5 home builders in Texas aren't buying a lot of inventory, and they're
not selling anything.
yeah. So, and we had a call. You saw that the note yesterday on the side, the person talking about the home builder in PA not selling any homes in his area, and one had, instead of selling a normal 10 homes, sold 2. And a guy named John called me last night from Iowa, said, "Hey, you and Matt should talk about this because I didn't hear it on the show the other day." He goes, you keep saying that all the wholesalers and distributors have low inventories, which is true. He goes, but there's 2 big national distributors that have VMI programs with all the mills that ship them a bunch of lumber without pricing it, load up their distribution. These big distributors then tell their buyers, "Hey, wait until next week to buy. We have it here and the price will go down."
Right.
So I
Yeah.
thought, you know what? That was an astute comment by him, because I sometimes never think about that, right? So
Yeah,
when
'cause they don't own that wood. They've got it. They can be just as speculative as if it was anything else, and just say,
well,
if you don't need it for 2 weeks, wait, and I can bring it to you in a day, and just wait for,
you're a
and
big mill, and you got to load up 150, 200 cars and move them, but you don't want to go out to the market and get a bid.
you just hide them.
Do you know where they're going? In many
VMI.
cases, not always. And they're going to go to one of the, 2 to 3 at all of these 72 locations across the United States.
Yeah, and it's just relocated. Then all of a sudden, you go, well, I'm bullish on my prices because I shipped all my wood. Well, you just hit it. It's
so
on the street somewhere. But
I liked what you want to talk about, how it is out there. We talked a little bit about housing. And I kind of noticed a trend every week. 6 months ago when we talked, we're like, "Oh, it's going to be different. Everything's fine. Don't worry. There's plenty of buyers out there for houses." And true, at any price, somebody will buy something. But things just started to slow down pretty good. So you put good, bad, or ugly business. Business was good, but that's changing to bad. Is that kind of what you're? And the 2 questions you have today: how many new home buyers on a 9 to 12 month waiting list last year were on multiple waiting lists? In lumber lingo, did they double buy? Right.
Right.
What's your thought there, Matt?
I just spent 2 hours on the phone with a builder who said that probably was not the case with the actual contracts. But what was the case was, if you have most of these subdivision now have, they'll have 5 major home builders in there building 250 homes or 500 homes or whatever. And so let's say you and your wife go out for the weekend and you're looking for a house, and you go into this subdivision and you go and say, well, here's what Horton's got to offer. They're 9 months out. Here's what KB's got to offer. They're 9 months out. Here's what Lennar's got. They're 9 months out. Here's what Pulte's got. They're 9 months out. And so they go to all these places and take tours. And so everybody's excited because they gave 30 tours a day for 6 months in a row. And they said the foot traffic is incredible. But it was the same foot traffic going to each of those builders, and they were seeing the same thing over and over and over again. That there's just insatiable demand. So they were all expecting that somebody's going to come back and buy those houses, but it was the same as the builder I was talking to before. Hang a minute. That's the builder I was just talking to about this, but
he's calling you to tell you not to mention his name.
Yeah. If you're on there, show yourself. But he probably is. But I was going to invite him to get on here and share some of his comments. But it was pretty interesting. What we kind of settled on was that the builders were almost in a euphoric state of being with all the promises and hopes and dreams of everything being really big for the forever and ever. So they just cranked up starts to be like 1.6 million. But the bottom line is, we go back to the very beginning of this year, there was no way they were going to be able to complete 1.6 million homes. So at some point, they've got to stop starting 1.6 million because they're only going to complete 1.3 million. And like windows and his example was roofing, for example. He said roofing there's been no change in roofing for like 40 years. It's just been the same production level, and it doesn't matter how much framing lumber you've got or how much brick you've got or concrete, but if you can't put shingles on it, it's just going to sit there, and the cost of that holding that home is going to be $300 to $400 a day while you're waiting on shingles for 3 or 4 months. Then it just gets to the point where builders have to stop building because they can't afford to carry the homes. But until the entire cycle of everything that goes into a home ramps up to $1.6 million, we're not going to build any more than $1.3 million. There could be one thing that holds it up, and it's going to stop it. And that's what's happening now in the fourth quarter. We're at a place where these builders just want to finish what they've got going and turn it into money.
Right. So how do we determine where housing demand really is? Well, there's a lot of unknowns going in the future, but right now, if you're a lumber buyer, what we're seeing right now is, and we're actually going into a unique time, and I always have to make this species related, right? Because historically, mills, this is the best time for them to be cutting wood, right? They've got a log deck. And like Greg said the other day, you got all the labor you need right now at the mills to do it. When I mentioned to Greg about curtailments, he did one of these. Yawned, right? Because he's like, of course we're going to hear that. He goes, and it's irrelevant, right? I shouldn't say it's irrelevant. It's, if you're a mill making those decisions, it's important. But what we're saying is they're not making those decisions because they're selling a lot of lumber. They're making them because
they don't intend to sell it.
Yeah, in less to do with the cost. It's more to do with a lot more comes on. You find that extra inventory or you find that extra production when you're selling $1,000 wood. You find ways to take that extra production off when you're selling.
Well, the reason it goes from $1,000 to $500 is they're not selling it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So right now, I think John Bavster had a good comment here. Market is paralyzed. Buyers or sellers don't want to be on the wrong side again. Business is still fluid if you have the product. Yeah, that's true. It just seems to me, let's take the spruce market, for instance. Futures is expiring in a couple weeks. It's a spot. It's $70 under the cash market. And so what is the real cash market? The cash market is well below where it's being offered at right now on spruce. Southern pine, Kyle made a good comment. 2x4 is still high on number 2 pine because a lot of that is still fluid to the truss manufacturers. But as you and I know, Matt, talking to truss manufacturers, these year-long order files that they had 2 months ago are gone.
Yeah, there's some spotty places where guys that essentially, if you're a broker and you sell to truss manufacturers, the MSR and number 1, the higher grades, it might be difficult to find, but the majority of the wood that's used is 2x4s. One of the guys mentioned yesterday that 2x6 was I think Matt Beamer said that 2x6 was the biggest item made in the South. That's not true. 2x4 number 2 is 80% of the 2-inch dimension lumber that's made in the South. It's the primary stick, and it needs treaters, and it needs truss manufacturers, it needs modulars, it needs everybody. That's what everybody cuts for.
So that's it. It is. It's is it really 2x4 is the biggest item?
2x4 number 2 of all the 2-inch number 2 dimension, 2x4 is 80% of it.
Okay, gotcha. And then what?
Everybody likes to cut 2x6s because when the price is good, you just naturally want to run a wider piece of board through the planer because you can get more board footage through it. But the demand is for 2x4s, and 2x4s were competitive going north for truss manufacturers because you could use 2x4 number 2 or number 1 and replace a lot of higher grade spruce that was unavailable. So it was creeping into other markets, but there's a lot more production that's come on board in the last 2 months.
How short do you think the buy side on the multifamily is getting? And because that group of players is historically always short.
I don't think they're short. I think they are. I think they're bought through the first half phase of what they're going to do. But those are jobs that aren't going to be. If they start to need lumber in September, they're going to be needing lumber for 3 to 6 months. So if they're short, it's not really they're short. It's just they haven't bought lumber that they don't need for 6 months or 3 months.
Peter was saying, I hope I have your name right, Peter Fillet. The other thing that needs to be pointed out is the amount of wood that the mills have now, contract with the big boys. It gives a false sense of market. They continue to ship wood at current print and say that is what they are getting, while at the same time quietly dumping $100 below the market.
Yeah, and what happens when the big boys say they got no more room?
Right.
You know, those contracts are good while the wood's moving, but when it stops moving, Home Depot says, you know, I appreciate the VMI program and thanks for loading me up, but we've got no more space to put it. And the VMIs have to stop, but the contracts have to stop. If there's no place to put it, you can't make your best customer get take more product than they can actually physically handle. So that those contracts go out the window.
That is a good point, Peter. I appreciate that. And like you said, with John, there's when everybody said there's not a lot of inventory on the ground, there may not be a lot of the traditional inventory that we see in the wholesale side and all that, but it all finds a way to get to a location to finally be sold, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and the other thing is there's a reason why you said this, the dichotomies in the market right now is everybody's busy right now, but they're busy because August, July were better than August and July normally because builders were starting more than they normally did because they intended to spend the fourth quarter completing. And so the builders know, the mills know, the lumber dealers know, everybody knows fourth quarter is not going to be like the third quarter. And July, September, and October are not going to be like July and August. It's going to be significantly less. So the reason they have less lumber is they know going forward they're going to need less lumber. It's just a matter right now we're kind of filling in and patching. And the thing that I would be cautious about though is as these rolling curtailments start to come around, things that are tough to find they're going to get tougher to find. So
that's a good point.
You don't want to sit there and just wait. Think I'm going to wait for this market to bottom out because if you wait for the bottom, you're going to find it's going to be tough to get stuff because if mills have curtailed, then stuff's going to be tough to get. So my recommendation to my members was to start buying next week and start trying to cover yourself through October, just while it's available and while it's cheap. It's not going to be at these kind of numbers. You're not going to miss business because of your price.
And as Matt Beamer was reminding me yesterday, I said, "Hey, is the rail situation fixed up?" He goes, "No." He goes, he didn't feel, this is his thought, it was any better. That so if everybody decided to come in and buy, rail is still not real efficient right now. It's not moving like it should be moving.
Yeah, and it's not.
That's why back to John Bavister, if you've got it on the ground, it's worth. You're finally getting paid over the last few years for keeping wood on the ground. Remember those 10 or 15-year period when you sold trucks and you had to pay and you were a discount to carloads? That's.
Yeah, I had a comment from a builder in Raleigh, North Carolina this morning that said that he said it's better to pay more and buy local than it is to buy direct and pay less, just because you got the turning. I mean, and it was like after crunching the numbers, he said just having the wood available so you don't miss. You're not sitting there for 4 or 5 days waiting on something. But I thought that was an interesting thought from a relatively large size builder to realize.
Absolutely, yeah, because they'd rather have the certainty.
Cheap isn't always the thing.
Well, that also means that when people are looking at that, they need the wood a lot quicker. They need certainty. What's the last thing? What's your first job as a buyer, right? Not to run out of wood. So
yeah, and then the boss comes in and wants to know how come all the wood's so high priced. Well, we got plenty of it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, great. And the other question you had in here, let's pray the sales numbers haven't been cooked.
Yeah, and I don't think they have, but I think the intention of how good business was over the past 6 months was probably exaggerated because and maybe misinterpreted by the builder thinking that it was going to be better than it really was because of the duplication of traffic.
Right on. Well, Matt, what do you got coming up this week and with the remainder of what we got left?
I'm thinking of the market as far as market goes. I'm thinking we're going to start to see more desperation and need to buy, and people are going to be like somebody said just a couple of rows back. Everybody's kind of afraid to buy because prices are going to be lower, and we're at a spot where the momentum of the market is taking the market down harder. But I noticed that towards the end of this week, we're getting the numbers that instead of being $100 and $50 lower, they're getting to be $10 lower, $20 lower. So I think the downside momentum is waning, and the need to buy just a little bit is going to. Everybody needs to buy just a little bit, but nobody wants to buy a lot. So we're going to probably get a little surge in September for a couple of weeks worth of bump. Then I think we got a. Then I think we got a sell off coming into October where we're just waiting for that the mill curtailments to start to pile up and the lumber to become legitimately really in short supply. But and it's regardless of what's going to happen in housing, housing could go to 900,000 starts. That doesn't mean lumber is going to go to $250 because the mills are going to adjust their production to what they're going to sell. It's just that little bit of lag time between the time that they start the curtailments to you really feel it. But while that's happening, you're going to see things become in short supply. Their 18s and 20s are going to get tough to get. 2x4 10s are going to be tough to get. 14s are going to be tough. Mobile home guys like those. So just I think it's a good idea to go ahead and scaling in your buying for the things that you're going to need between now and the end of October, just to get and don't be worried about the price. The numbers are good already.
Yeah, I didn't even look at what futures were doing today, but I would guess that where cash was at and where futures were at.
It's up about $10.
There's probably going to be some people looking for that to set the tone of what the 2x4 market is, and then all the basis traders and the people that do stuff off based on that and forward sell off it may have some opportunity there. Have you heard anything about
everybody's got the number everybody's got in mind for 2x4s. Everybody wants to buy 2x4s at $400. So we're not going to get there.
Where's the low trade price you've heard so far?
$550 on 2x4 spruce.
Okay. Versus a CME of what price today?
What, like $485 or something?
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. All right, well, everybody, I'm going to throw Matt's email up here. So if you want to get, if you read, I read the LinkedIn post you had today, sign up for Matt's scouting report. It's free. That's an introduction.
I'll give you something. If you guys want a real time view from a host of people across the market sector, look at my LinkedIn page. I said a thing yesterday. So I'll do something, or 2 days ago. I'll do something unique, and that's I'm going to ask you for your opinion. What do you feel like the market's doing? And I got lots and lots of responses of people telling me what their position in the market is and what they think's going on. And just look at that thread for here's the title of it is "Here's a Novel Idea." Just look for that post and just follow. It's a long thread of exchanges. The cool thing is people talking to each other, not talking to me, but they're exchanging conversation with each other, saying, "Yeah, I'm feeling the same thing," or "I don't think the same thing." But it's a great dialogue.
Well, appreciate that, Matt. And at Materials Exchange, we are working on getting our front end put back together here. We'll be back up next week with an announcement. So look forward to that on Tuesday. And without anything else, Matt and I will be on next Thursday at the same time. Matt, thanks for the time today. And again, sign up for Matt's scouting report. And if you want to be a scout for him, I'm sure he's also willing to talk about that and get the report and report back numbers.
Yep. Love to do it.
All right, everybody. Have a great day.
Thanks, Ash.
Matt.
Have a good day.
Yep, you too.